welcome to another episode of the Loor Entertainment Podcast. Andrew Southwick with you today, joined once again by our resident. He's not a, well, see, I'm sorry, Jason, I gave the spot of Grand Poobah of all things theology and entertainment to John Speed, so I can't take that, can't give that to you, you understand, but perhaps, I don't know, theological court jester might suit you. I'm not
That'll
sure.
work. That'll work. Yes.
So, Loor executive, Loor founder Jason Farley with us today. How are you, Jason?
Doing great. Having a good day. How are you doing?
Oh, man, doing well. I tell you what, and I am, this is me casual. You'll notice I do not have my jacket on today. It's actually hanging over the back of my chair. I should have moved it before I started the show, but I didn't. And you see, my studio is, I don't actually have traditional air conditioning. I've got a window unit on the other end, and I've got a little fan next to me. So those of you listening, if you hear a little bit of air in the background or white noise, that's because if I don't have that on, I'm in Florida, it's 101 degrees today. And so I've got to be a little bit free. I've got to be, a little bit loose. Otherwise I'd melt in front of you around all my lights and everything. So I'm doing well. It's just really hot. And I don't know if you saw this too. Well, we just declared a state of emergency because we have local transmission of malaria in the Sarasota area of Florida through mosquitoes. So
I had not heard that.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, there's good treatments for that. Hydroxychloroquine, by the way, treatment for malaria.
Yeah.
Only 4 cases. They all recovered. And usually what happens, just so in case people are wondering, malaria can happen in tropical climates, but most of it's in Africa. And there are cases of malaria and little small outbreaks in America almost every year. The last time they found it in Florida was almost 20 years ago, something like that. And there was like 8 cases. I think there's 1 in Texas. And so what happens is a mosquito bites somebody who has malaria, and then they bite another person. It's not transferred person to person. It's from mosquitoes. So, you can get your bug spray, or we use like natural sprays and lavenders and that kind of stuff. Anyway, so other than that, everything's going pretty well. Trying a new production software here for the show, just to streamline some time. Got lots going on, as we all do. So lots to do, lots to talk about today. Want to use this episode and address some Loor audience and Loor user questions, and even some objections as to whether or not to join and subscribe to Loor. Why do this? Why jump on this platform? Especially when you know that you're I think we're at $14 a month, something like that, and you subscribe. Well, Loor.tv, by the way, Loor.tv, you can subscribe today. But why would you subscribe to a platform that doesn't have a lot of content? We haven't licensed back episodes of Different Strokes or anything like that. So why do that? We're going to get into that with Jason Farley a little later on in the show. First, I do want to talk about an interesting story that came across, and this has to do with entertainment and faith-based things. This is an article, and full disclosure, friends, Jason has not heard this story, other than I just let him know real quick before we started recording here that I'm going to talk about it. But this will be his hot take on this. The article by Kendall Tietz, or I don't want to, Tietz. I don't know how to say it because I'll say it wrong. I'll pronounce it wrong. From Fox News, over the Fox News Wire. Texas Christian University offers a queer art of drag course requiring students to create a drag persona, and the students are also required to engage in queer theories in relation to performance practice. So, TCU offered a course in the spring of 2023 titled "The Queer Art of Drag," which required students to develop a drag persona and engage in these queer theories in performance practice. The class, offered through its Women and Gender Studies department, and is taught by Nino Testa, whose drag persona goes by the name Maria Von Clapp. Will explore, quote, drag performance as an outlet for social critique, pedagogy, and queer world making, according to the class syllabus. In addition, students will explore the history of queer art of drag, meeting with drag performers and experts to create their own drag personas to debut at TCU's annual Night of Drag. Now, Jason, my first thought as I see this, Texas Christian University. TCU.
Right.
I'm going to say the name again. Texas Christian University. Now, it's one thing for them to offer the course. It's another thing that if they're offering the course, they have an instructor who has a drag persona. This doesn't seem like anything more than the indoctrination and the taking a step toward apostasy that we see when churches and bodies of believers fall away and end up forgetting their first love entirely, not even being worthy. I mean, even the 7 churches in Revelation, Jesus still called them churches. Okay, so he's still considering them to belong to him. Their priorities are mixed up. But the apostate churches, these are ones they completely abandon God and his word and his truth, and we're seeing this step over and over again. This infiltration has infiltrated denominations far and wide in the West. It's infiltrated certainly our lower schools, as in elementary, junior high, and high school. We know that, and now we're seeing it. Texas Christian University. Let me get your initial reaction to this, but also, Jason, what is it that we are really up against spiritually? Because this is an attack a demon would do to me. In my view, what are your thoughts here?
Well, I think all 3 words, Texas Christian and University, are undermined by this, because for one, can I really take Texas seriously anymore if this is what their Christian universities are doing as some sort of, they're offering to
what happened to Don't Mess with Texas?
Exactly.
It was 3 minutes ago. Texas was, the guns in the Navarone, and it was the conservative Mecca. This is the place where we all are going to go, and we're going to stand at the Alamo again. It's going to secede from the Union and be this bastion, this haven of Christian conservatism. It seems like it's falling off the map and falling into these progressive hands faster than any other state in the Union.
And it's every place where federal money is coming into the state. If so, my Texas Christian University, I know, because there's only a couple of colleges left that don't take federal money. I know they take federal money, and here they are. This federal money is subsidizing the destruction of the other 2 words, Christian and university. It's obvious in the ways that this isn't Christian, because God doesn't tell us that putting on a dress is what makes a woman, right? When God creates Eve, he creates Eve as this as the creature that has all of the wisdom that Adam needs to be able to do to complete the mission that God gave him. That she was the kind of creature that was different, but the same species of creature, but different in the sense that she had what Adam lacked. And to think queer theory, central to it is the breakdown of that kind of distinction, that a guy can put on a dress and talk with a lisp and put on a wig and appropriate everything about being a woman. That's not the way reality works. You're fighting reality at that point.
And we right now, and I don't know I know it was one of the Loor guys that just posted on this on their Facebook page. There is a name for this. Isn't it cultural appropriation? Isn't this the same thing that, isn't this the same reason why Hank Azaria stopped voicing Apu on The Simpsons? Because God forbid that a cartoon fake person be voiced by a real person. So we can't have that. So is it not cultural appropriation for men to pretend they're women? I mean, doesn't that then fly in the face of this progressive woke morality system that we're supposed to follow and follow in lockstep?
But queer theory, it is about the breakdown of norms, so they don't even care, right? If that's the whole, it's an ideology that is about the breaking down of norms in order gather power and rebuild society into a different thing, right? So it's part of just a perpetual revolution mindset that that's very Machiavellian. So that's why, I mean, for a lot of years, the right has thought that all we have to do is point out the hypocrisy and that we're somehow winning. They don't care about the hypocrisy because it's not about, because that's why I think the last word there, university, where you can have, the idea behind a university is that, like a universe that has a lot of different planets but functions together as a whole, the university is about training in a lot of different facts and subjects, but that they actually are a unified whole when it comes to knowledge, that knowledge is a unified whole. In queer theory, they don't believe that. Knowledge isn't a unified whole. That knowledge is a way of gaining power in order to win in the rivalries. Queer theory is about developing and using the rivalries to break down what's considered normative. The word university assumes that there is such thing as normative reality, and that knowledge it can reflect normative reality. So it's neither Texas nor Christian nor university at this point.
Well, it can't be, because all of these theories that are infecting every institution, they tie themselves to an unmoored non-truth, and it has to, because if you take each thought out and flesh it out logically in game theory from any angle, it collapses almost immediately. You mentioned they're breaking down norms. Here's another quote from the article. This is, I don't know who said this quote. Actually, it doesn't say here. Anyway, but it says, gender revolutionary Leslie Feinberg begins the book Transgender Warriors by invoking the violent question asked of so many queer, trans, and non-binary people. Are you a guy or a girl? Now, first, it sets up this as a violent question. A violent question. How is it violent to say, are you a guy or a girl? I mean, actually, you can usually see that. Very few people are truly androgynous where it's hard to tell. But anyway, and then it goes on to say the gender binary is enforced through compulsory norms, harassment, and violence, it's enforced through violence. So down through the years, this is what we have to believe, down through the years, that gender norms have been enforced violently and kept this way, and we're only now discovering how wrong we were. In service now of a white, cis, heteropatriarchy, which basically is, remember, the white Christian man is the devil. This is in the syllabus at Texas Christian University. Texas Christian University, which would also, by its name, you would have to assume, would believe the book of Genesis, male and female, God created them, male and female. He created them. In the epigraph to this syllabus, Feinberg encourages us to abandon the sterile and diagnostic attitudes toward gender that characterize dominant cultural logics by asking us to consider gender not as a category of being, but as poetry. Feinberg opens up new ways for us to understand and experience ourselves and our worlds. Go ahead.
They set everything up in terms of rivalry, power structures. Everything is about power. And in the Christian world, it's not. It's about service, right? We're told by Jesus that that rivalries come from sin and from the fall, and that we restore the intended order by serving God and then serving one another, because then reality is restored, right? Reality is restored by as our relationship with God is restored. We are reinserted into reality, and you can tell that this is an attempt to just live against reality, to deny reality, to deny that reality has a nature, that reality has existence, but if you think about it, the world, if the world is created via the mechanism of evolution, then things are held in place by coercive power. Reality is held in place by coercive power. And so if you have more coercive power, then you get to define reality, because reality is held in place by the coercive power of death. And that's just not true, right? It's just not true. Reality is held in place by the word of God, by the continual speaking of the word of God, and Jesus Christ is the integration point of all things and the integration point of all knowledge. And you take that away, and what you get is rivalry, and a power hungry power snatch that's just going on here and there. And they're just saying, we want to take down that enemy over there and become the ones in power. We want to take over and take power. And
that's similar to what I hold on, in a view that I hold in, like when it comes to the idea of systemic racism, for example. It's not the racism that people have the problem with, it's the system. They want to be in charge of who we get to be racist against. We even see that today with progressives going crazy that the Supreme Court undid affirmative action in colleges. So no longer can colleges be racist, Harvard and UNC, as two of the biggest perpetrators of that. But it's kind of the same thing. They want the power to be able to discriminate, the power to be able to choose what death is necessary. And it is interesting. It's the exact opposite. Where Jesus wants life, Satan wants death. And this other worldview, effectively, as you mentioned, the coercive power of death, it uses death and says that that's bringing about something good, that it's good that there are less of us, that it's good that we don't have a purpose, that it's good that there's no difference between any one of us at all, that there is no creative purpose, there's no creative intent, there is no creative will of any kind, there is just death, and that's about it. I mean, to me, I mean, when you look at that objectively, I mean, my heart does break for so many people that this is the worldview that they live under, and I am incredulously perplexed that Texas Christian University, who you would think would have smart people at the helm, would go along with such a madness.
Well, and what I find devastating in all of it is that when they say you've got to create a drag persona, what they mean is you get to it's in a lot of ways, I think it's worse than blackface. Right? Are you allowed to say that? Can I say that? Right. Because with blackface, at least when everybody looks at it and says, but that's an exaggeration. That's not real. That's not the way things are really. Right. Because the racial stereotypes, we are obvious to us. With the trans, they're taking the worst kinds of stereotypes about women and then trying to make that the norm, saying like, I'm just acting like a woman, and then they're over sexualized, they're dancing, they're provocatively dancing, they're acting like the power that their femininity is a source of power and control. That somehow that a woman's sensuality is the way that they use it is a bad stereotype of women, right? Yeah. It's like the worst stereotypes of women from the 50s and the 60s, and then you dress up that way and everybody was like, oh yeah, look, she's acting like a woman, right?
Yeah. And the fact that true womanhood is defined by a male's imagination of what a woman is that not the very definition of an oppressive patriarchy?
Right. I know, like, for those of us that have been trying, that have been, arguing that women ought to be honored with feminine honor for years, I find it incredibly offensive that overthrow any sort of feminine honor as even a possibility, and say, well, no, we're going to act like the way men imagine women should be, and then everybody says, oh, look, she's just acting like a woman. A woman is whoever a woman pretends to be. Whoever a woman, whatever a person says they identify as a woman is, that's what a woman is. And you think, I've been fighting for that feminine honor ought to be shown to women, and that we should restore the old round table vow that a man's job is to protect all women and show women honor and glorify women for their wisdom and their femininity and their ability to bring forth life, and all these things. And it's just a slap in the face of those of us who believe women ought to be honored as women.
Here's the thing, and if it's okay, Jason, I'm gonna take the last word on this.
All right,
and we'll move on because we got to get to a lot of lore stuff. But here's the thing: if you really don't know, or maybe you're a Christian and you think, well, gee, maybe I've been too patriarchal or something like that. The real thing is this: you have to think back to creation, and you have to think back to when you see the summary of creation and you see Adam naming the animals. Why did he do that? Because there was something not good about a perfect world. And you have to remember that before sin, the world was perfect. Sin had not entered the world. Death had not entered the world. Disease had not entered the world. War had not entered the world. Oppression, et cetera, you name it. Anything bad we have today was not in the world when Adam was naming the animals. Why was he doing that? Because he was looking for a suitable helper. He was looking for a companion. And the paradox that existed before the creation of woman was that there was this perfect world that God said was good, but still something was not good. And the prescription for that was the creation of woman, a special and unique creation made differently than any other thing that God had created before. And it was the female of the human species was the completion of creation in God's created work. It wasn't done. It wasn't good. Everything was perfect, but not yet good enough. This can be improved, and woman is the improvement of that. That is worthy of such an honor. Moreover, when you look in Ephesians chapter 5, everybody points to this and says that Christianity is, misogynistic and everything, because Paul says, wives, submit to your husbands. By the way, there are plenty of jerk husbands who are not submittable, okay, and not honorable, and they shouldn't be. But right before that, Ephesians 5:20 or 5:19, I think, he says, so submit to each other. Everybody submit to each other. That's what Paul says. And then he gives 3 examples of what submission looks like: husbands and wives, children and parents, slaves and masters, or employees and employers, effectively. And he calls for a different kind of love for the husband to give to the wife than the wife to the husband. He doesn't call the wife to the agape sacrificial love that he calls the man to in that, because he says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church. That same command is not given to the female, to the wife in that. There is a difference. There is a special and unique difference. And what we are doing in this madness, we are really, we're not undoing it, because God's work cannot be undone. It can be obfuscated or we can be blind to it. We can misuse it, but we can't undo what God does. But we're confusing it to such a degree that we're missing out on that. And there is a beauty in the creation of humanity and in the relationships between male and female as friends or as spouses, what have you. And there is, I think, an abundance in the fullness of creation that we are flat out rejecting and trying to hide from future generations through doing this. And I want to ask you your thoughts on that. So I'll give you the brief last word and we'll move on. Sorry, I'll take the almost last word.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, I think that the beauty and the glory of the way God created humanity is that he gave men and women to incredibly different kinds of creatures with different perspectives and views on everything, and said, marry one another, and together you can accomplish the mission that God gave to Adam. and it takes the differences existing in fellowship to actually accomplish what God gave us to do in the world. So all of these attempts to undo and flatten out the differences are really attempts to get away from what God told us to do, which is turn this place into a garden, right? Is to get out there into the world and transform it into transform it into what God intended it to be, which is a beautiful garden full of fellowship everywhere. And people that don't want to do that, one of the quickest ways to undermine it is you need men and women able to work together. If you flatten out those distinctions and those differences, and men and women can't work together anymore, then you're not going to get the dominion accomplished. You're not going to get the gardening done, and you're not going to get the fellowship restored. So it undermines reality.
Randy Newman was right. We belong together. Okay. Now we're getting back to entertainment. Now, part of that was entertainment because Texas Christian University is asking these people to come up with personas, to come up with characters, and dive into this world. Well, that's one of the reasons why Loor TV exists, not to encourage people to dress in drag and dive into the world of white, cisgender, heteropatriarchicalness, but actually to present an alternative, to present the true points of view, the true storytellers, true storytelling, true truth-telling, based faith entertainment. And, again, it's something that we really don't have a lot of. There are a couple of, Christian studios that put out different products to varying degrees of quality, depending on your work or your taste, what have you. Some of them I like, some of them I don't. I mean, mine's more of a music background, so it's like I'm kind of the guy that I wish that Christian music would have the same kind of production and innovation that a lot of the rock music had from the baby boomer era. Like, it just sounded so like plastic and produced and pristine and beautiful, and it missed some of the human experience that we can relate to. And I think the same is true for Christian entertainment and movies. So now we have Loor TV, which is gaining traction across the entertainment industry. We're starting to get mentions on shows like Timcast the other day. We were mentioned there. If you haven't seen that clip, you can find clips of that all over our Facebook pages. Search for Loor, Loor on Facebook. But I want to address some of the maybe some of the objections or hesitations that people may have to subscribing to Loor right now. Because look, it's no secret that Loor is a startup platform. It's a startup entertainment platform and has a different business model and a different way of funding its entertainment. Where really you, the viewer, you, the audience, directly fund the shows and movies that are produced. So instead of, for example, a Netflix, which takes your subscription money, part of it goes to their in-house production. And yeah, they have other production companies and they do other fundraising, and so does Loor. But some of it goes to that, and then some of it goes to licensing other shows and movies that they can run then for whatever period of time on their platform. Well, we're doing it ourselves, and we're not subject to censors. We're not subject to ESG scores. We're not subject to, what's his name, Fink at BlackRock telling us that we have to, have a gendered or whatever the thing is, representation. We can tell the stories that God wants to tell through each one of the creators, each one of the filmmakers, each one of the storytellers on the platform. But in starting out, admittedly, there isn't as much content as the other platforms. And so, Jason, I want to ask you, and we'll talk about a couple specific projects as we go through this part of the conversation, but, how do we get over some of those objections? So with setting aside those of us that have, really tight budgets and we can't afford another subscription right now, totally understand that, no begrudging that at all. But for those of us who might be thinking, well, gee, I want to see that show, but that show's not on right now, so I'm not going to subscribe. Or this is a new platform, and I'm not really sure. It's an unproven business model. What are some of the ways that you overcome those objections when you are talking about Loor to the people in your circle, and maybe some things that those of us who are considering subscribing to Loor might need to factor in to our equation?
Yeah. Well, like you said, this is the way that it works, that somebody gathers up the crowd's money and then goes off and makes content with it. And what we're trying to do is to let the crowd then have a say in how the crowd's funds are spent. Right. So this, in a real sense, we're not the way the cycle of gathering money and spending it is not different. The difference is that Netflix has been now doing it long. I mean, if you remember 15 years ago, you couldn't go stream things on, or you weren't streaming things on Netflix. They weren't at a point yet where you did have a whole bunch of content. They went and got investment money and started with House of Cards and spent, went all in on House of Cards and said, this is going to be our flagship. And then announced once it was done. Well, we're doing it the other way around, because if you saw and watched House of Cards, then you know that House of Cards didn't end by glorifying and showing, here's that righteousness is good and true and beautiful, right? That's not how that show went. And we're trying to prove that actually that there is a significant audience out there for the kind of content that does glorify righteousness, that does show that goodness and truth are beautiful. But instead of doing it by going and saying, hey, we're going to go raise a bunch of money, we're going to make stuff that we are confident people are going to love, and then go find an audience for it, we're going to the audience first and saying, which of these things is the one that you want? So if you don't jump in now, you don't get a say, right? By the time you show up, it's made, right? And so it's like starting out on anything. When I was involved in starting a school, there were 4 families that got together and said, we're going to start a Christian school. The families that didn't jump in the first year didn't get a say about how the manual was put together. They didn't get a say about, so that the families that come along later, somebody else built it for them, and so they don't get to see. They don't get a say. It feels like there's less risk in that, but the reality is you're just dimming your own voice. You're turning your own voice down.
Well, and here's the other thing too. A lot of people are clamoring for, and we've probably heard the term going around quite a bit, a parallel economy. Because if we've learned anything in the past few years, COVID was revealing that there are active forces working against the everyday citizen in America, and certainly the Christian conservative citizen in America. And we have for years allowed Hollywood and our public education system and our medical system and our system of government and our legislations carry our values for us instead of us doing it ourselves. And what that has done is now we're kind of in this everything bottlenecks, because when they decide we're done pretending to like you, and now we're going to box you out of participation, which is exactly what's happening through cancel culture, through the medical tyranny, through students not being able to get into school because of either their opinions on a certain matter or they didn't take an experimental jab or whatever it might be. These are things really happening, and it's happening all across the country. I live in what we know as the free state of Florida, and we have our own issues too with these things, even as free as we might look nationally and politically. So I would suggest too, those of us who are concerned about that, we want to see a parallel economy emerge, because if our grocery store doesn't want to serve us anymore, where are we going to get food? Not all of us are farmers and ranchers, right? So where are we going to do this? Well, if Netflix and Disney, certainly, they've said, we do not care about you or your family or your kids. We're going to do our thing, our way, and you can, go up your nose with a rubber hose, right? So I would put it this way. When America was founded, which, by the way, if you think about this, the revolutionaries that founded America to overthrow less tyranny than we're experiencing right now. Okay?
Right.
Just go back and look. All right. King George was nothing like Sir Houseplant Biden. But anyway, there weren't 365 million people in America at that time. I know there were Native Americans or whatever it is. I mean, name me one country that didn't exist because of conquest. I'm not saying it's right, but that is what it is. I can't go back in time. But there weren't that. And you might have been in merry old England saying, well, gee, I'd like to wait till the country develops until there's a corner store and maybe a doctor's office somewhere in town. Or you could jump in at the beginning. And I think that's what we're doing right now is we are paving this ground. And yes, there are less pavers than there are people who will trot upon these roads in the future. But you really need the foundational pieces, the foundational subscribers, because that's what's going to establish this. A parallel economy only becomes a parallel economy if people begin to use it, right?
Right. And we have found that there are plenty of great Christian artists out there ready to make movies, ready to tell the stories, ready to make the TV shows, that have found it frustrating throughout their careers that the only people willing to take risks are the people on the left. They're willing to say, hey, I want the world. I want the world to turn out a particular way, and I'm willing to spend my money in advance to get it there. The conservative Christians have tended to say, I will let somebody else build the world, and then I will come along and live in it as carefully as I can, rather than say, I'm going to get out there and try and build something for the next generation. I'm going to build up a storytelling inheritance for the people that come along after that. And so we don't have what it is that we would like, because we're not willing to get out there and take those risks often. Now, one of the things that we're doing at Loor is when you join, you immediately start building up experience points, XP, and those experience points get you to the front of the line on things, on different quests that are coming down the road. They get you bonus loot at different times during different quests, and they raise the value of your as time goes on, the amount of loot that you get per month goes up as you hit different levels and experience points. And so there are people that are going to be, at paladin level when you jump in down the road, and you're just a newbie rookie, and because they jumped in early, and so they're going to continue to have more say down the road because they took the risk with us early on. So, right now, a couple of programmers, Marcus and myself, are winning the XP game because we jumped on so early, and our XP keeps going up. So, and if you quit and then come back, you have to start over at the beginning too. So there's always a you're losing the game the later you start it, the later you jump in.
Well, let's give in the next few minutes here, let's give viewers a little bit more of a taste, a sneak peek of what some of the projects are that are upcoming, that are being funded, that we can look forward to. And I've got a couple here. I want to show a clip of a new one called Black Rose Ballad, which I know that we are... we being Loor are beginning a full court press on this to promote it and help it get funding. We've got an interview on the Loor Entertainment podcast with Joel Burris, the filmmaker behind Black Rose Ballad. That's coming out, at least as of this recording, it'll be next week. We'll see when, it'll already have come out by the time you see this. I'm getting confused because I record so many, it doesn't, anyway. I really live in a time paradox, but nonetheless, it is one of the big releases coming out on Loor. So if I played my cards right here, we're about to see this come to fruition. Let's take a look at Black Rose Ballad.
Friend, foe, lend me your ear. which I am chief among them.
Well, that's just a little taste of what's upcoming. And, Black Rose Ballad, Joel Burris is going to a lot of different locations in filming the different scenes and shots in that film. And it really looks like a powerful film of really depravity and redemption. Jason, what are some of the things you're excited about with this project?
Well, one, I've already read the script, and so I know how amazing the story is. And I can't imagine the first people that read The Sixth Sense who then went out and tried to say, look, I can't tell you the twist at the end, but you got to get this made, right? You got this amazing script. I feel that way about Black Rose Ballad. It's one of the best scripts I've ever read. I read scripts all the time. It's an amazing story. It's really well written. And then I love Joel's style of filmmaking. He cut his teeth making heavy metal videos for bands, right? He makes just fantastic, intense movies, and he loves the Lord. He loves storytelling, and he loves telling the kinds of stories that move people towards wanting to do what's right. And that's what this story is. But he does it by showing the sorts of the what happens when you pick wrong and God's wrath starts hunting you. When you do the wrong thing and the wrath of God comes after you, you don't want that.
Yeah, well, sure, yeah, no, I'll pass on God's wrath if at all possible. You mentioned this is one of the best scripts you've ever read. That's not a small thing to say, because I don't think you say that lightly or
no, not at all,
or superfluously as a funding superlative. But what makes a script good? That's one of the things we hear all the time. Actors say, well, I read the script and it was fantastic. And, those of us lay people out here that don't even like to read, we're like, well, what does that mean? Can I watch the movie of the script first and then tell you if it's good? And that's pretty much, that's where I live. But what makes the script good? You read a bunch. Yeah. Why do they suck? Why are they good?
Because most people will never read a script, because scripts are designed so that a group of people can tell a story together, and the script is the thing that holds the story for all of the different people that are going to tell the story together, because movie making is a collaborative art form, and so it takes a whole group of storytellers working together. Well, and I read a lot of scripts. I've written a lot of scripts and read a lot of scripts, and I've got my favorite script writers: Edgar Wright, William Goldman. Those are my top two favorite script writers. And what makes a script great is when the story comes alive as you read it, and you have to keep flipping the pages, because you've got to find out what happens to these characters, right? Yeah. When you end up invested in the life of these characters and it's coming alive, that's when a script is working, when it's really good. And it's written a lot different. It's got a very industry specific format, because there's so many people that end up working on it. But what makes a script really great is when it introduces characters that you end up caring about, and when it tells a story that simultaneously satisfies and surprises, right? Yeah. So you can, my favorite script of all time is The Princess Bride, William Goldman. Yep. And when you read it, and then my second favorite is Baby Driver, which it's not the same thing as saying that's my favorite movie, right? The script is what's so brilliant is the way, like with that one, he weaves together a musical playlist where the words are a part of the storytelling, all of the words of the songs that are always a part of the storytelling. So all of the music that you hear in the background is in the script for Baby Driver, right? Okay. So you're reading along and you realize, and this song has to be here because this song is adding information that you need for the story, right? That's really brilliant. That's not normal. Normally somebody else chooses the music at the end of everything. And that's how you know that that the story is told in a deep multi-layered way. And I mean, I think you've got a script like that with Black Rose Ballad that has multiple layers, characters that you are invested in, and then an ending that at least for me made me go, what? Oh my gosh, I did not see that coming. But it's so perfect. They couldn't end in a better way. But with the surprising moment that says that all of this is a spiritual allegory about you. Yeah. Right. You get to the end and he doesn't come out and say that. Right. It's just that you realize the ending reformats the whole story so that you can go back and watch it again. And that's when you've got a great script. When you get to the end and if I go back to the beginning and I reread this, the story's fresh and new because the way that it ended gives you information that you didn't have at the beginning. And that's, that's what makes a classic rewatchable, is because every time you watch it, there's more information this to rewatch with.
This may be a confession or a condemnation of myself. I don't know. But I recently, my son and I watched Pulp Fiction. I showed him Pulp Fiction, and I realized there's a lot of language and violence. I get it. But that script was incredible because it's just exactly what you're talking about. You get to the last act, and every other act in that movie all of a sudden changes. And when you go back again, you see it from a whole new light. Sixth Sense was the same way. We can always look at M. Night Shyamalan. He's trying to do that in every movie to different degrees of success. But that one actually, which was before The Sixth Sense, Pulp Fiction was, accomplished that, at least in my lifetime, as one of the better ones to really turn it on its head, but not in a way that was cheap or contrived, or the whole Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, it's aliens, or Never Talk to Strangers, you're a multiple personality schizophrenic, something stupid like that. It was like, oh no, this is all these gaps filled in, and now I can see this whole story in a whole new way. It sounds like you're saying something similar. Black Rose Ballad is not Pulp Fiction. That's not what I'm saying. But it sounds like a similar kind of effect or storytelling.
It
is what you're implying.
It is, yeah. So and the this is what the inheritance of all things is ours in Christ. And when you've got a great Christian storyteller, they have often the freedom in Christ to tell stories that you couldn't get away with in Hollywood. And this is one of those stories, right? That you're not allowed, for example, for God's vengeance to show up because of an abortion. You're supposed to feel really bad for the abortionist and the girl that had to get the abortion, for whatever reason. But if God's wrath shows up and punishes in the story, shows up and punishes a woman for choosing an abortion, you're not getting that made in Hollywood, right? But we can tell that story as Christians if you get the funding for it, right? It's a story that everybody knows is true, right? At the deep gut level, we all know it's true. But everybody's afraid to tell that story. If you give a guy like Joel Burris the money to tell the story that he wants, that guy is not afraid to tell the truth, and he's got the skills to back it all up and tell it in a moving and beautiful way. When I'm looking for new projects, I've got one of my tests is if I can't sit down after reading the script, if I have to take a walk, or seeing the seeing the preview, then I know we've got something special on our hands, right? Well, and there's just been a handful of those projects that are like that, whereas like this has to get made. I cannot sit down. This is too good. Black Rose Ballad is one of those. Barely Biblical is one of those, right? Where you're just like, this is how can this not be made yet?
That's a great segue. I want to remind everybody again, Loor.tv, Loor.tv. You can subscribe right now and help get these projects made. You mentioned Barely Biblical. I'm going to take a little try here, show you a clip from that. I may screw this cue up, so if I do, don't worry, we'll get it right. But let's take a look at Barely Biblical, and then we'll talk about why you're so excited about this, which is, by the way, we're starved for children's content, right? That we can trust. Do you remember the days? And I remember the days because it was like 6 weeks ago when if your kids wanted to watch something, if it was Disney, yes, I don't have to look at it. Go ahead, and anything. Disney Junior, just turn it on, let it run all day. No problem. Now, actually, Disney's the one you got to watch. Like I would sooner say yes to, MGM or 20th Century Fox than I would to Disney at this point. But this is something like that where, hey, you want some kids content? Loor's got that too. Barely Biblical is one of those. Let's see if we can take a look at this here.
The Philistines have sent out their champion Goliath of Gath.
Okay, whoa. Who is this uncircumcised fluff bag?
Give me a bear that we may fight together.
You can take him.
Do you see that guy? It's like he's stuffed with steel wool.
I may look soft, but I'm a hardened man of might. Whenever bears and lions tried to steal a lamb from my father's flock, I defeated them easily. Yeah, we could fight him, but first we're trying to figure out what King Saul might give to the one who's able to take him down. I bet he'd give him treasures in a house to store them.
Well, I think King Saul give his daughter in marriage.
Which daughter? Merab's nice, but Michel's a gal worth at least 100 foreskins.
Yeah.
Pass that over. Whoa, bro. I'll take care of the sheep, but first, I'm gonna take care of this mouthy Philistine.
All right, there you go. There's a sneak peek at Barely Biblical. Holy smokes. Now, I can tell you, I have never seen David and Goliath like that before. Jason, what is so good about Barely Biblical?
Well, the talent behind it, right? Tim Ingle, James Arnold Taylor, now Chris Savino is on the project as well. We're talking the top of the industry, right? This guys at the very, very top. James Arnold Taylor, he plays he's in Clone Wars. He plays Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? It's Obi-Wan Kenobi in Clone Wars, right? Like literally the best in the business. And he loved the project and jumped on board and said, "Oh my gosh, I'd love to be a part of this. This looks amazing." And you've got great animators, great storytellers, great writers. But on top of that, they love the Bible as God gave it. And they want to give it to kids as God gave it. They're using the reason they're using stuffed teddy bears is because you can get away with telling the story truly in a way that you have C.S. Lewis talks about how you've got to sneak past the watchful dragons with the truth. And we have, for whatever reason, we have decided that we can't just give kids the Bible straight in our society, that you have to balderize it, that you have to really tone it down and get rid of the things that really make the story fun, especially for boys. So using teddy bears, you can tell the story exactly as is. So when it says the ravens then came and they ate the flesh of the enemies of God, and that you can actually have the ravens show up and be pecking the dead bears and bringing the fluff back to use for their houses, like it says in the Bible. Which you couldn't get away with otherwise.
What's interesting about this is that, again, I think back to when the tapes were released, there was some recording from Disney executives that they said, yeah, we're going to put, the Alphabet Mafia stuff and the Tranny Madness stuff, and we're putting it all in every show. And one of the executives said, I put it in every show that I touch, whatever, as much as I can. Well, it's taking that and turning it on its head. I mean, you could, if you want to look at it just, flippantly, you would say it's a troll, but it really isn't, because, it is, here's what the Bible says. And Jesus intended the Bible to be taught also to children. Deuteronomy 6 tells us plainly, teach it to your kids. Tell when the sun comes up, when it goes down, when you go out to work, when you sit down to eat, when you're out in the fields. Tell it. Make sure you tell it. Make sure you tell it, and tell it to your kids. You never see Jesus turning away children in his ministry. In fact, rebuking those who try to keep the children away. And yet we have, in Western Christianity, hid a lot of the biblical truth from the kids and given them, I think, a not a false picture, because we do teach Jesus Christ, but not a full picture and not a complete understanding.
Not a full picture.
And that's part of what lends to our naive understanding as we get older, and our diminished relationship with Christ. And here we're actually bringing that back. This is what the Bible says. And by the way, in my time in pastoring, children's ministry, one of the aspects of children's ministry, in fact, the most important aspect of children's ministry, is actually the parents. I think that children's ministry should be more geared to parents than to kids. Why? Because parents are the children's ministers. Again, Deuteronomy 6 does not say, parents, make sure your kids are enrolled in children's ministry at your local church, and make sure that they're in Awana or Rural Rangers or whatever your group is. It says, mothers and fathers, tell your kids. We don't equip parents very well to be the ministers for their children, but that is part of our responsibility as parents. This is one way to help have those conversations with your kids and to help teach your kids the Bible as it is. Am I, aiming toward the right target there?
Yeah, absolutely. And what's so interesting. So G.K. Chesterton says, kids need stories with dragons in them, not because they know that the world has monsters, right? They need stories where the dragons are slain, because they need to know that when they come across monsters, that God can take care of the monsters, right? So the reality, the scriptures are a description of the way the reality is. Kids they get scared running into reality, because it's actually a hard place to be a human being because of the fall. The Bible takes that seriously and shows how God is involved and near to us through all of it. Yeah. So when we take out the scary parts from the scriptures, we actually do our kids a disservice, because the world has scary parts in it, and they need to learn to be able to trust God in the midst of those scary parts. So, but here's the thing that I have found really interesting. So I have, when I travel and when I am out and about, I like to meet strangers, and I go to, and when people find out that I work in acquisitions for movies and television, they say, well, what kind of stuff are you working on? I love to tell just groups of complete strangers, at a pub somewhere, about Barely Biblical, because even the non-Christians get excited. Because a lot of non-Christians will say, I would watch that because I'm curious what's in the Bible. And I know that, and so if it's really what's in the Bible, I would watch that just because I'm curious. And they think that it's the idea of doing the most violent Old Testament stories with teddy bears they find really funny and intriguing, but they especially find the promise of accuracy really intriguing, because I think most non-Christians don't believe that they think that they are being fed a line and not really being told what's in the Bible, and that we try to sanitize the Bible for them. Unfortunately, we do. That's been, I think, one of the most intriguing things is the number of non-Christians who have said, said, when you launch, let me know. I'm going to go check out Loor TV. I'm willing to help fund that.
Well, now we have launched. Loor is launched.
We have.
Barely Biblical is funding. Black Rose Ballad is funding, along with many other projects that we will be talking about in future episodes of the podcast. So right now, go to loor.tv, LOOR.tv, subscribe today. Again, fund the movies that Holly wouldn't. That's what we like to say. Based faith entertainment, whatever tagline you want to call it. Here it is. It's biblically accurate. It's compelling storytelling. It really is. Hollywood will turn it off because it is so accurate to the Bible. It is truth portrayed, humanity as we are, but also as Christ can redeem us. And you'll see this in story after story. And there's good stuff. There's good stuff in every piece, because you Jason, you talked earlier about you're reading through these scripts. You're meeting with the filmmakers. You're not just choosing. You're not desperately picking up projects because you need content. You're choosing these selectively and with a discriminating eye, if I can use that term today, because you want the best stories. We're not trying to launch Loor and have it be a bunch of filler material and stuff from the bottom of the barrel and underneath the subway. We want to find the best and the brightest filmmakers, the best most well-written stories that will give you the best entertainment, but also point you to the truth of Christ. So, Jason, I'm going to give you the last word in the program. How about a last-minute pitch for those on the fence, not sure if they should subscribe or not? Go.
Yeah. So now is the time to do it, because as you get in there, you get to really actually help guide and direct which direction we go. But also, we have another 30 projects waiting in the wings that we just can't wait to show you, and that I think you'll be really excited about. And it's just a matter of getting enough subscribers that we can get these projects funded and decide which ones people are not interested in, so that we can get them out of the way and get something up there that you are interested in, and find the projects that really serve you as an audience. But if you're not there, you don't have a say. So jump in while you still have the chance.
Jump in today. Loor.tv, LOOR.tv. For Jason Farley, I am Andrew Southwick. Thanks for spending some time with us on the Loor Entertainment Podcast, and we'll see you next time.